For 30 years in the apocalypse, I became the last person in the world to die standing. And then guess what? I was reborn. I returned to 3 months before the apocalypse, holding a provincial-level spatial ring in my hand. First thing, dump my manipulative girlfriend. Second thing, spend all 50 billion. Third thing, turn the supermarket into my own warehouse with stockpiles. 3 months later, the apocalypse arrived right on schedule. While everyone else cried for their parents, I held my cute little niece, eating hot pot and enjoying the air conditioning. My enemies from my previous life? Not a single one of them should think about staying alive. In a luxurious room, I was awakened by something moist and soft. I opened my bleary eyes and looked at the luxurious chandelier above my head, my mind suddenly short-circuiting a little. Where's this? Wasn't I dead? Memories of 30 years in the apocalypse surged in like a tide. Hunger, slaughter, betrayal, despair. Scene after scene flashed through my mind. When I lowered my head and saw the woman lying on my chest, I felt as if I had been struck by lightning. This is before the apocalypse? I looked again at the furnishings in the room and the high-tech clock on the wall. Blue Star Calendar, April 1st, 2066. 3 months before the apocalypse began. I really had been reborn. The woman let out a soft moan. I frowned and shoved her away. I remembered this woman, Wu Shui, very clearly. After the apocalypse broke out, her father fled with the whole family, her mother died of illness, and I saved her when she was on the verge of death. Later, she clung to me relentlessly and stayed by my side, and I helped her father establish a small base to get through the crisis. Until the third wave of natural disasters descended, this woman secretly defected to another faction. In the apocalypse, joining another faction is betrayal. With the information she brought over, the other side could destroy everything I had. In the end, I uprooted that faction completely, and her fate was naturally miserable. Baby, what's wrong? Wu Shui looked at me pulling up my pants, her face full of confusion. We're over. My tone was icy as I dressed myself. She sat on the bed in a daze. Why are you driving me away? We've been with you for so long. You just wanted to use my money to help your dad's company with cash flow. Did you think I didn't know? Wu Shui froze, then gritted her teeth and said, You're really heartless. I said nothing and headed straight for the door. Since you're so heartless, don't blame me for being ruthless. I stopped, turned back to look at her, and said, I advise you not to think you're clever, or else. I guarantee you'll suffer more than death. You devil. Hatred flashed through Wu Shui's eyes. I laughed. A devil? Yes, the devil is back. It won't be long before you see what a real devil truly is. I slammed the door and walked out, took out my phone, and dialed a number. Hello? From the other end of the line came a soft, sweet child's voice. My nose stung, and my voice choked up. Kiki. Uncle, why are you calling Kiki? Hearing this familiar voice, I nearly burst into tears. I hadn't heard this voice for 27 years. Uncle, are you crying? Uncle's fine. Be good. Kiki, Uncle's coming to take you home. Really? Really? Yay. After hanging up, I sped off in the car impatiently. Kiki was my only relative in this world. In the 3rd year after the apocalypse broke out, because of a sudden natural disaster, Kiki left me forever. Even now, I still remember the sorrow of her tiny body gradually losing its warmth. I remember how helpless I felt when she hid in my arms and said, Uncle, don't cry. Kiki doesn't hurt. I'm just a little sleepy. The helplessness of that moment is a nightmare I never want to endure again. I once swore to become stronger, find the mastermind behind this damned apocalypse, and hack him to pieces. But even though I reached the pinnacle of humanity, I still couldn't turn the tide. I died in that final great battle that decided humanity's fate. Fighting to the very end, looking at the battlefield around me covered in devastation, looking at my fallen companions on the ground, I became the last human in this world. The last human to die on his feet. Now, I have been reborn. In this life, I will protect Kiki at any cost. If gods stand in my way, I'll kill gods. If Buddhas stand in my way, I'll kill Buddhas. Jinxiu Luxury Villa District. My car came to a steady stop in front of a villa, and with a nervous heart, I pressed the doorbell. A few seconds later, the gate opened. Mr. Mu, you're here. The maid greeted me politely. I ignored her and walked straight toward the living room. The moment I entered, I heard a noisy quarrel coming from upstairs. You little brat, what's so bad about letting your uncle and aunt stay a few more days? All day long you only know how to cling to your uncle. You little burden. This sharp and mean voice belonged to Wu Shui's mother, Su Fong. None of your business, and she's not Kiki's aunt either. Kiki retorted stubbornly. You. I shoved the door open. Inside the room stood a little girl who looked about 6 or 7 years old, exquisitely pretty like a doll. wearing a white princess dress, with big watery eyes blinking, lips slightly pouting. She looked adorably innocent. "Uncle." The moment she saw me come in, Kiki immediately threw herself into my arms, rubbing her little head against me with all her strength. "Kiki." I gently stroked the little girl's hair, and years of longing turned into tears that streamed down my face. I hugged Kiki tightly, afraid that if I let go for even a moment, I would lose this angel. "Uncle, Kiki missed you." Uncle missed Kiki too. I carefully studied the little girl's face, afraid this was just an illusion. "Uncle, why are you crying?" The wind while driving got in my eyes. At this moment, Su Fong completely dropped her earlier sharpness and meanness, and came up to me with a smile plastered across her face. "Mo Yun, why didn't you stay with Xiao Xue a few more days? With me taking care of Kiki, you can rest assured." I shot her a cold glance. "Who were you calling a burden just now?" Su Fong froze. She had never seen such a terrifying look in my eyes, as if I wanted to devour her alive. "And no, that's not it. I was just joking around with Kiki." Su Fong was weak and sickly, and died in the early days of the apocalypse. I couldn't be bothered wasting words on someone who was about to die, so I picked up Kiki and walked toward the door. "Oh right." I paused in my steps. "From now on, the Wu family's cooperation with my group is terminated. Tell Wu Changshan that if he doesn't want to face a lawsuit, he'd better settle the overdue payment immediately." After throwing out those words, I left without looking back. The moment the front door closed, Su Fong staggered and fell to the floor. I had no interest in knowing any of that. After leaving the villa, I drove toward the suburbs. "Uncle, where are we going?" Kiki asked, swinging her little legs. "We're not keeping the old house anymore. We're moving into a big Lakeview villa instead." Yay, little Kiki was delighted, chirping nonstop all the way and asking about everything she saw. I did not feel the slightest impatience, and patiently answered every one of the little girl's questions. Looking at innocent and carefree Kiki, I kept cursing my former self in my heart. Such an adorable little niece. And you actually had the heart to leave her in the care of people like that? What a bastard. The Wu family had deep ties with Feng Lin Group, and in order to create a world for just the two of them, Wu Shui deliberately sent Kiki away. Back then, I was too naive and actually agreed to it. Fortunately, after only a day or two, the me of now took her away. "Uncle, the place up ahead is so beautiful." In the distance, there was a vast shimmering lake, surrounded by rockeries, with charming scenery. "Kiki, from now on, this is where we'll live." The car drove into Highland Bay Private Manor. I bought this a long time ago. I had originally planned to make it Kiki's 18th birthday gift, but now it seems that won't be necessary. The manor covers 1,000 mu and is an island in the middle of the lake. Surrounded by Blue Sea Bay, it is one of the most luxurious estates in Jiangzhou. "Master." An old butler came forward, his attitude respectful. "Tidy up a room. I'll be staying here these days." The estate is attended to by dedicated staff 24 hours a day, so it is ready to move into at any time. Holding Kiki's hand, I walked toward the castle. From now on, Kiki will be the little princess of the castle. "Like Princess Elsa?" Yes, just like Princess Elsa." Kiki broke free from my hand and pattered into the castle to play. Watching the little girl's cheerful figure from behind, I couldn't help but curl my lips into a smile. "Keep a close eye on Mississippi. If anything goes wrong, you'll answer for it." I instructed the maids on both sides. Everyone hurried to agree. After instructing them to let Kiki play by herself for now, I came alone to the study and locked the door. Looking at the sky blue ring on my right ring finger, I frowned. I had already noticed it in the car earlier, but I was too eager to see Kiki to examine it carefully. This is a spatial ring, forged from a space-type ability crystal core. In the later stages of the apocalypse, a king who had awakened a space ability coveted the world's last sausage in my hand and chased after me like a madman, trying to hack me to death. In the end, he got himself killed, and I took his crystal core. At that time, food was scarce to an outrageous degree. Even though he had opened up such a vast space, with nothing to store in it, he still couldn't escape the fate of starving to death. In the end, it all benefited me. With a thought, I touched a fountain pen on the desk. In an instant, the pen vanished. With another thought, the pen reappeared on the desk. There was hardly any consumption. It seems my spiritual power is still very high. Spiritual power is something innate, divided into 9 levels from F to SSS. You can think of it as talent. It is fixed at birth, with no way to improve it. The stronger the spiritual power, the more terrifying the abilities one can wield. In the apocalypse, there are no useless abilities, only useless talent. My spiritual power is SSS level, an existence standing at the top of the pyramid. Otherwise, I wouldn't have survived to the end. After testing the spatial ring, excitement gleamed in my eyes. There are still 3 months before the apocalypse. If I don't fill this space to the brim, I'm a complete idiot. Second floor dining room of the castle. Gorgeous carved benches and exquisite crystal chandeliers exuded noble elegance everywhere. Yet what clashed with it was my crude way of eating. I wolfed down the lavish lunch the maids brought me, and whenever I choked, I grabbed the red wine and tilted my head back to gulp it down. 30 years. Do you know how I lived through these 30 years? I ate big mouthfuls of steak and drank red wine until my stomach was painfully full before stopping. I could barely remember what meat tasted like anymore. I closed my eyes and took a deep breath. When I opened them again, a trace of resolve flashed in my eyes. Those days when life was worse than a dog's will never happen again. I said it. Even Jesus himself couldn't stop it. After instructing the servants to take good care of Kiki, who was still exploring the castle, I drove away from the estate. Downtown, inside a skyscraper. This is property belonging to the Lin family, the richest family in Jiangzhou. Strictly speaking, it has now become property of the Mu family. Feng Lin Group, with an estimated market value of 50 billion. President Mu. The security guard greeted me respectfully. I tossed the car keys over and strode into the building. People came and went inside, and every employee wore a uniform business outfit. When they saw me, everyone greeted me one after another. With no obstacles along the way, I went straight to the top floor office. My sexy secretary, Chu Antian, had already been waiting for a long time. President Mu. Cancel all of today's schedule and immediately gather the departments for a meeting. Sitting in the boss's chair, I gave the order calmly. Huh. Chu Antian froze. This afternoon is the day to sign the contract with Tianlong Group. Canceling it would mean paying tens of millions in breach of contract penalties. But President Mu, do as I say and carry it out immediately. In Chu Antian's eyes, I seemed like a different person at this moment. I had become imposing and cold, and the chilling glint in my eyes that struck fear into the heart made her shudder all over. Understood, President Mu. She did not dare say another word and immediately turned to arrange the meeting. I picked up the documents on the desk and began to look through them. They contained information on all of Feng Lin Group's industries and projects, real estate, jewelry, dining, entertainment, covering every field. It could be said that everything in Feng Lin Group had nothing to do with me. Those assets belonged to Kiki. Mu Yun was an orphan who had depended on his older sister Mu Wanner since childhood. This business empire was built by Lin Tian, also an orphan who grew up with them in the orphanage. Lin Tian and Mu Wanner were childhood sweethearts and had been together for a long time. They even had a child. When Mu Yun found out back then, he grabbed a kitchen knife and stormed to Lin Tian's rented apartment, nearly hacking Lin Tian to death. I treated you like a brother, and you actually wanted to sleep with my sister. If his sister had not stopped him, Lin Tian probably really would have gone to report to the King of Hell. Since his sister was still in college at the time, with her belly growing more prominent by the day, she inevitably suffered others' ridicule. Mu Wanner, who had been an orphan since childhood, was very strong. She said nothing and silently endured it all. No one had expected that Lin Tian, who had just stepped into society, would rise to fame in one stroke. In just a few short years, he created the giant that was Feng Lin Group. Mu Yun once thought this guy must have been involved in something illegal, that the money had come from shady sources. But after investigating, he discovered that Lin Tian had really earned it through his sharp instincts and business acumen. The couple's married life was happy and fulfilling, and Mu Yun did not slack off just because he had a sister who doted on her younger brother as his backer. He continued completing the studies he had not yet finished. Until the terrible news a year ago. His sister and brother-in-law encountered a plane crash and both perished. All they left behind was Lin Kiki, not yet 5 years old, and a vast business empire. Fate toys with people. Heaven is unjust. At that time, Mu Yun felt as if the whole sky had collapsed, and in an instant he lost all sense of direction. Thankfully, Kiki was still alive, which slowly helped Mu Yun pull himself together. According to inheritance rights, Mu Yun, as the sole guardian, was responsible for managing the group on her behalf, and it would return to her once Kiki turned 18 and came of age. However, there probably won't be such a chance. Looking down at the scenery outside the floor-to-ceiling window, the memories of 30 years ago seemed vividly clear. If only I could be reborn and return to a year ago. Damn heaven. Mu Yun muttered to himself, his hands clenched tight. He knew the past had ultimately become history, and that Mu Yun could only pour his feelings for Mu Wanner and Lin Tian into their precious daughter. Knock knock. The sound of knocking interrupted Mu Yun's thoughts as Chu Antian pushed the door open and entered. President Mu, the heads of each department are already in the conference room. Mu Yun gave a slight nod. Let's go. Inside the conference room. What's going on? Why were we suddenly all called here? Yeah, there haven't been any major decisions lately. Isn't there still the signing ceremony with Tianlong Group this afternoon? If we're having a meeting at this time, won't it be too late? Everyone whispered among themselves, all somewhat unsure of what was happening. As Mu Yun appeared, the entire conference room instantly fell silent, and everyone stood up and greeted him. Everyone sit. After Mu Yun sat at the head of the table and motioned for everyone to sit down, he immediately spoke. The reason I've called everyone here today is to announce several important matters. Hearing his baffling words, everyone looked at one another. But Mu Yun paid them no mind and simply continued. The first matter. Our cooperation with the Wu Group will be terminated starting today. As soon as these words were spoken, everyone was in an uproar. President Mu, isn't this decision a bit too rash? Yeah, the Wu Group has always been one of our long-standing clients. If it weren't for their support in the early days, Fenglin Group wouldn't have reached its current scale. President Mu, although our Fenglin Group is developing very rapidly now, the Wu Group is also a capable company. If we completely fall out with them, I'm afraid. Those words immediately caused a commotion, and everyone began trying to dissuade him. However, faced with this situation, Mu Yun remained calm, not affected in the slightest. Mu Yun cast a cold glance at everyone. It seemed there were still a few moles from the Wu family among them. He silently noted down the people who had taken the lead in objecting. These were all executives poached from other companies in recent years. If they were old employees, Mu Yun could at least understand it as lingering old loyalties. But for these outsiders who joined midway to say such things was highly suspicious. Only after the conference room fell silent once again did he continue speaking. I understand everything you're saying, but Mu Yun paused and swept his gaze across the room, an invisible aura rising naturally from him. His voice also became much deeper. That wasn't support. At most, it was a decent business partner. Over the years, our Fenglin Group has already taken very good care of them. We're not running a charity. If they themselves are not up to par, they have no one else to blame. We've already done all we could, understand? Mu Yun's tone was filled with intense pressure, causing everyone to feel a chill rising in their hearts. All right, the matter of the Wu Group is decided like this. I called you here today mainly to discuss another matter. Hearing this, everyone returned to their previous expressions. President Mu, please go ahead. Yes, President Mu. Please just give your instructions, President Mu. Looking at how smoothly these people switched to flattering whoever held power, Mu Yun reached a conclusion in his heart. After the apocalypse, there was a high probability that this group in front of him would be dead weight and couldn't be kept. But at this stage, he still needed them to stabilize Fenglin Group, and it wouldn't be too late to deal with them after getting the supplies in hand. Next, I'm preparing to build a new concept shopping mall, so I need you to find suitable suppliers as soon as possible. Food is the priority. Rice, vegetables, fruit, seafood, chicken, duck, fish, meat, anything edible, I want it all. Our products won't be limited to these. They will also include a series of supporting products, such as appliances, medical supplies, clothing, accessories, and so on. Anything involving daily necessities must be fully procured. The startup capital is tentatively set at 10 billion. Hearing Mu Yun's words, everyone's expressions instantly froze. They simply suspected there was something wrong with their ears. Going this big? Mu Yun swept his gaze around. Who agrees? Who objects? I think this. Just as a mid-level manager was about to say something, Mu Yun cut him off. If you think it's difficult, you can go to finance and collect your pay. His tone was extremely forceful. No, we have no objections at all. Linfeng Group was not publicly listed and had no shareholding system. It was entirely Mu Yun's one-man rule. Naturally, these employees wouldn't lose their jobs over this. And if the boss wanted to stir up trouble, they couldn't stop him anyway. Very good. In that case, let's adjourn. With that said, Mu Yun was the first to turn and leave the conference room. After Mu Yun left, everyone began discussing again. What's up with President Mu today? Why is his temper so bad? I didn't even dare meet President Mu's eyes. That aura was too frightening. No idea. President Mu was clearly still very gentle yesterday. Gentle in what way? Oh, stop teasing me. None of them took Mu Yun's change seriously, and they didn't even think deeply about it, assuming he had just lashed out because he'd recently run into something upsetting. But Chu Antian didn't think so. Watching Mu Yun's departing figure, Chu Antian fell into deep thought. Having been Mu Yun's personal secretary for nearly a year and spending day and night with him, She had long understood his personality. Gentle and approachable, sunny and upright, Mu Yun was quite popular in the company and definitely not someone who would lose his temper easily. But today's Mu Yun seemed like a different person, his whole body exuding a sharp aura, as if his edge were fully unsheathed like a blade. It was almost as if he were a battle-hardened warrior. Chu Antian frowned and thought hard, but could not make sense of it at all. Then, remembering that today's work was still unfinished, she hurriedly caught up with Mu Yun. In the office, Mu Yun was holding a form and marking crosses on it. Idle real estate, sell it. Hotel-related businesses, sell them. Steel industry, keep it. Financial industry, sell it. Internet industry, sell it. One by one, industries that would be meaningless in the coming apocalypse were marked with crosses. All of these industries would be sold, and the funds gathered to purchase more supplies. Although Fenglin Group's market value was over 50 billion, that was total assets. The liquid funds that could actually be used freely were at most only 10 billion. There were still 90 days until the apocalypse. He had to quickly find some suckers to take these off his hands while there was still time. By then, these things would be worthless. Knock knock. There came a sound at the door, and Chu Antian walked in from outside. President Mu, the breach of contract documents for Tianlong Group need your signature. She placed the file in her hand on the desk, then quietly waited for Mu Yun's response. Tianlong Group was a well-known financial enterprise in Jiangzhou. With the apocalypse just around the corner, still doing finance. Wasn't that acting like a sly old fox? Mu Yun glanced at the compensation amount of 13 million, and after seeing no issue, signed it directly. He then handed over the form in his hand as well. Transfer all the industries I've crossed out. Chu Antian took one look and sucked in a sharp breath. It was densely covered with big red crosses. With nearly more than 80% of Fenglin Group's industries being transferred out. Was this the rhythm of cashing out and running away? This was too outrageous. She suppressed the shock in her heart. President Mu Yu. Sure. Do as I say, Mu Yun replied flatly. Understood. After getting a definite answer, Chu Antian turned and walked outside. Just as she stepped over the office threshold, her footsteps paused. With a conflicted expression on her face, she hesitated for a moment, but in the end still gathered the courage to speak. President Mu, although I don't know your real intention in doing this, you are, after all, only the group's acting head. For some matters, I hope you'll consider them carefully. This was a reminder, but also an act of goodwill. All right, I'll keep that in mind. Mu Yun let out a soft laugh, his gaze falling on her with a hint of approval and appreciation. This girl is quite interesting. Unlike the others, who look like whatever happens to the company has nothing to do with me, this girl has a sense of responsibility. She can enter the observation period first. If she met Mu Yun's standards, he wouldn't mind giving her a hand. After speaking, Chu Antian's cheeks flushed slightly red as she withdrew. She actually just wanted to persuade Mu Yun not to act recklessly. Because embezzling money and running away was illegal, and if caught, things could go very badly, and one could even be executed. However, what Chu Antian did not know was that her words had already caught Mu Yun's attention. Woman, you have successfully caught my attention. In the office, Mu Yun continued thinking about the next plan. Food and daily necessities could be collected by the group, which would save him a great deal of time. But for some other special supplies, such as medicine, weapons, rare metals, coal mines, gasoline, and even planes and tanks. If possible, Mu Yun even wanted to buy a couple of Dongfeng Expresses to play with. Without special channels, there was simply no way to obtain these supplies. So, Mu Yun set his sights on free and beautiful Jian. Just as he was making plans for this, a burst of commotion came from outside the office door. Mu Yun, you little bastard, you toyed with my daughter and then dumped her. You crossed the river and tore down the bridge. You're simply not a man. A greasy, middle-aged man barged straight into the office despite Chu Antian's attempts to stop him. Sorry, President Mu, I couldn't stop him. Chu Antian looked at Mu Yun with a somewhat helpless expression. With a wave of his hand, Mu Yun signaled for her to leave first. Then he sized up the middle-aged man before him, dressed in a suit, with his potbelly squeezed tight, and sparse, messy hair. Uncle Changshan, what brings you here? Mu Yun said with a half-smile. Wu Changshan let out a cold snort, his face grim as he demanded, let me ask you one thing. What outrageous thing did my daughter do for you to use her, and then kick her away? And why did you terminate the cooperation between our two families? If our old Wu family hadn't supported that brat Lin Tian in the early days, how would Fenglin Group have what it has today? Wu Changshan shouted especially loudly, as if afraid the people outside wouldn't hear. Unfortunately, the soundproofing in Mu Yun's office was excellent. Facing Wu Changshan's questioning, Mu Yun leaned back casually in his executive chair and said indifferently, "Haha, Uncle Changshan, you can't put it that way. This is already 2066. When it comes to feelings, if two people aren't suitable for each other, there's no need for them to stay together, right? As for this cooperation matter, our Fenglin group is preparing to transform, and our previous industries are all being transferred one after another. In order not to delay Uncle Changshan's group, we cut off the cooperative relationship. I'm doing this for your own good." Mu Yun put on an earnest look. "After all, we've worked together for so many years. How could I bear to see your group fall into trouble? Now that we've terminated the contract, Uncle Changshan should be happy instead." Wu Changshan angrily slapped the table and stood up. "Happy my ass. I'm telling you, Mu Yun. Stop trying to fool me here. I've eaten more salt than you've walked roads. You think a few words can send me away? Dream on." Mu Yun impatiently waved his hand, cutting off Wu Changshan's threats. He picked up the office landline and called Chu Antian outside. "The transfer plan and the contracts are all ready, right? All right, bring them in." Putting down the phone, Mu Yun stood up, stretched lazily, and strolled to the floor-to-ceiling window, looking down at the bustling traffic below. "Uncle Changshan, take a look yourself." Soon, Chu Antian came in carrying a stack of documents and handed them to Wu Changshan. "This is..." After seeing the contents of the documents clearly, the anger on Wu Changshan's face vanished, and he was instantly stunned. Mu Yun's gaze swept over him, and a trace of mockery flashed in his eyes. Then it turned calm and unreadable again. "These all have the official seal on them, and I wouldn't joke with you over something like this, but if Uncle Changshan is interested, you can take over all these industries, but you'll have to pay in full." Mu Yun stared at Wu Changshan with a smiling expression like an old fox. "Given our many years of friendship, I wouldn't cheat you, would I?" To be honest, at this moment Wu Changshan really was tempted. These were not industries acquired through bankruptcy liquidation. They came with ready-made suppliers and ready-made channels and industrial chains. You could start making money as soon as you bought them, and in just a few years the assets could even double. "Well, Mu Yun, your uncle was too anxious earlier and spoke a bit harshly. Don't take it to heart." Wu Changshan immediately put on a smiling face, his eyes gleaming as if he could see countless banknotes waving at him. Mu Yun waved his hand calmly. "Of course not, Uncle Changshan. What kind of relationship do we have? It's just a small matter. How could I possibly hold a grudge? But if you want to acquire it, you'd better hurry. Opportunities this good don't come around often." "I understand. I'll go back and prepare the funds right away. Within a week at the latest, I'll definitely close this deal." Wu Changshan rubbed his hands together, his face glowing with excitement that was impossible to hide. He couldn't care less why that idiot Mu Yun had lost his mind and wanted to sell off his businesses. In any case, he was definitely getting an enormous bargain this time. Whether he could soar to the top would depend on this chance. With that, he left the building impatiently. Watching Wu Changshan's departing figure, Mu Yun's expression turned cold. "Let's see if I don't ruin you." Night fell, and after finishing today's work, Mu Yun returned to the manor. The moment he got back, Kiki threw herself into his arms. Uncle Mu Yun fondly stroked her head. "Was Kiki good today?" Kiki pouted and said coquettishly, "Uncle never plays with me." "I'm mad now." Mu Yun smiled, bent down to pick Kiki up, and walked toward the dining room. "Uncle will be very busy these next few days. I'll make it up to you later, okay?" "Okay then." Kiki nodded reluctantly. Looking at his adorable little niece, Mu Yun's heart softened completely. He couldn't help lowering his head to kiss her on the cheek. "So annoying. Uncle Stubble is poking me to death," Kiki muttered. Hearing this, Mu Yun burst out laughing and kissed her again. The two of them bickered and joked their way to the dining room, and everything felt so warm. Served by the maids, Mu Yun ate delicious dishes like furong yinkai, stir-fried minced pigeon, shimi xianglian, five-color fish rolls, crispy sea cucumber strips. All delicacies prepared by top chefs. This reminded Mu Yun of something. Although he could stockpile endless supplies, without a good chef, he wouldn't be able to make food like this. As for his own cooking skills, better forget it. At most, he could make a bowl of noodles. Time stood still inside the spatial ring. Whatever state something was in when put inside, it would be in the same state when taken out. He could absolutely stockpile more ready-made gourmet food. If he stored it now and took it out more than 10 years later, it would still be steaming hot. There were too many people and too many eyes in the manor. So if food disappeared out of thin air, it would definitely cause unnecessary trouble. But that wasn't enough to stump Mu Yun. Fenglin Group itself operated several high-end restaurants. So with a little maneuvering later, it shouldn't be a big problem. After eating and drinking his fill, Mu Yun took a comfortable hot bath. He hadn't bathed in more than 10 years, and soaking like this all of a sudden felt unbelievably good. After the bath, Mu Yun changed into his pajamas and lay down on the soft bed. He hadn't had a peaceful sleep in more than 10 years. The moment he closed his eyes, Mu Yun fell asleep. But he didn't sleep too deeply. At the slightest disturbance, he would wake up immediately. This was an instinctive reaction trained into him by 30 damned years of the apocalypse. In the peril-ridden apocalypse, there was never much time for people to rest. No one knew when disaster would strike. Every extra second of rest meant one more second of mental energy recovered. And on top of that, one had to stay alert and protect oneself. Mu Yun didn't dare relax his body. He feared that the moment he let down his guard, a fatal blow would be waiting for him. But the apocalypse had not yet arrived, and even when it did, the dangers in the early stage would not be enough to cost him his life. His originally taut state gradually loosened. Mu Yun fell into a deep sleep. Creak! The door was suddenly pushed open. The next moment, Mu Yun sprang up from the bed like a ferocious beast ready to devour its prey. His eyes fixed sharply on the doorway, his hand already clenched into a fist. As long as the other party made any unusual move, he would unleash a killing blow without mercy. However, a cute little head sneakily poked in. Mu Yun instantly restrained the killing intent all over his body. False alarm. I'm really too sensitive. There are still 3 months until the apocalypse, and right now it's an age of peace and prosperity, especially in Huaxia, where it's very safe. But why did Kiki sneak in the middle of the night? Caught red-handed, Kiki scratched his little head. Hee hee. Uncle, I'm scared to sleep alone. Mu Yun sighed helplessly. All right, come in quickly. Kiki immediately darted to the bedside, slipped under the covers, and obediently nestled into Mu Yun's arms. Don't move around. Go to sleep. Mu Yun patted Kiki on the back. Kiki answered obediently, but then suddenly raised his head and blinked. Uncle, will you stay by my side forever? I will. The next morning, Mu Yun slowly woke up. He didn't know how long it had been since he had slept so soundly, but in any case, he had slept especially well last night. Time to get up, little sleepyhead. Mu Yun pinched Kiki's chubby little nose. Princess Aisha doesn't need to get up early. Kiki sleepily muttered, then continued curling up in the blanket and sleeping soundly. You little rascal. Mu Yun didn't keep trying to wake Kiki up. After getting dressed, he went to the balcony. Outside the window, the sun was shining brightly, birds were singing, flowers were fragrant, and a breeze swept by, bringing waves of coolness. Mu Yun took a deep breath and instantly felt refreshed. I really hope the apocalypse never comes. Mu Yun murmured, then drove away from the manor and began today's plan. The red supercar arrived at Yulu, the most famous restaurant in B City, and then had the manager called out. President Mu, you were looking for me? The manager stood respectfully in front of Mu Yun, not daring to be the slightest bit negligent. Yulu was a long-established restaurant in B City, and all the ingredients inside were purchased from local farmers. The food tasted excellent, and the prices were reasonable. So many dignitaries and nobles chose to come here to dine. At the same time, this place also belonged to Feng Lin Group and was part of its catering business. Stop serving the public for the next 3 months. We need to receive a major client. Mu Yun instructed. The manager immediately agreed. Understood, please leave it to me. Let me finish. For the next 3 months, the chefs are not allowed to take any leave. Have them work overtime and make everything. As long as it's on the menu, I want every dish, with no limit on quantity. Also, have everything packaged and delivered to this villa in the suburbs. Hearing Mu Yun's words, the manager's expression shifted unpredictably. This was the first time in his life the manager had heard such a request. Could it be that President Mu wants to fire me, so he's deliberately messing with me? President Mu, if there's anything I've done poorly, please just say it. I promise I'll correct it. The manager said tremblingly. It was his first time encountering something like this, and he was panicking. What are you talking about? Mu Yun saw the manager's misunderstanding and immediately didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Don't worry, just do as I say, and after it's done, I'll double your salary. If you're still alive after 3 months. Mu Yun silently added in his heart. Don't worry, President Mu, I will definitely do my utmost. The manager bowed repeatedly in excitement. Mu Yun waved his hand. Let the head chefs know as well. Once it's done, all their salaries will be doubled. Understood, I'll go notify the head chefs right away. Remember to keep it secret. This is a trade secret. Slip quietly into the village. No shooting. Hey. Immediately afterward, Mu Yun went to 5 or 6 more major restaurants and repeated exactly what he had just said. In this way, after 3 months of accumulation, that should be enough for himself and Kiki to eat for decades. The only drawback is that the dishes cool easily, so Mu Yun would need to stay in the original villa at all times to receive the deliveries. But even if they cool down, it doesn't matter. At worst, he can just reheat them before eating. The taste will only be slightly worse. After finishing all this, Mu Yun drove to a factory that manufactures large storage racks. Mu Yun was a perfectionist. He didn't want the supplies piled up in his storage space to be a chaotic mess. And to make it easier for himself to find the goods he wanted right away in the future, it would be better to properly plan out the space. When he arrived at the factory, Mu Yun directly spent 5 million to acquire it. He also ordered the workers to start production around the clock. Mu Yun's space was larger than an entire province, so no matter how many storage racks there were, it still wouldn't be enough. So he simply contracted the entire factory to serve him alone, which also made it more convenient for him to use the space ring. After instructing the person in charge to transport the racks produced each day to a designated location, he drove off again. Soon, he arrived at a warehouse district near the outskirts of B City. This was the logistics warehouse of Fenglin Group. President Mu, what brings you here? The logistics manager in charge of the warehouse immediately came forward after seeing Mu Yun's car and said respectfully, "Do you have any instructions?" Mu Yun nodded. "How has warehouse usage been lately?" Of the 10 large warehouses, 5 are still empty at the moment, while the small and medium-sized ones are all currently in use. Hearing this report from the logistics manager, Mu Yun frowned. Supplies worth 10 billion was a staggering amount, and afterward he was planning to go abroad to purchase weapons and ammunition. If he didn't remove the supplies in time, the 5 large warehouses would be filled within a few days. So Mu Yun asked again, what exactly is stored in those occupied warehouses? Mostly some large furniture and appliances, plus some small items used for renovation. After receiving the manager's reply, Mu Yun immediately ordered. All those previous businesses have already been transferred, and these things take up too much space in the warehouse. Tonight, I'll have someone move all of them away. I'll handle this matter myself. There's no need to keep anyone here tonight. Give all the employees the night off, and let the old gatekeeper go home and rest too. Oh, yes, understood. Although the manager found Mu Yun's actions strange, since the boss had spoken, all he needed to do was follow orders. After all, he was just an employee. How was it his place to question the boss's decisions? Also, after some time, a large amount of supplies will arrive one after another. When the warehouse is almost full, give me a call. Understood. The manager quickly assured him. Good. Keep up the good work. I think highly of you. After giving these instructions, Mu Yun finally drove back to the detached villa. Coincidentally, as soon as he arrived, he saw Due Tower's food delivery vans. 3 large vans were parked outside the yard, their cargo compartments filled with neatly packed food. For better heat retention, the outside was wrapped with a layer of insulating film. When he saw Mu Yun, the manager from earlier hurried forward. President Mu, these are the freshly prepared dishes, 108 dishes in total, with 20 portions of each. Hearing this, Mu Yun smiled. You're quite efficient. It's only been a morning, and you've already made so much. Thanks for making the trip, Manager Zhao. The manager waved his hand with a smile. It's nothing, President Mu, you're too polite. All right, wait for me a moment. Mu Yun gestured with a wave. Sure, no rush. Mu Yun entered the villa alone. The previous bedroom was in complete disarray. The pillows, duvet cover, bedside lamp, television, and the rest had all been smashed to pieces. Clearly, Wu Shui had done it all, but by now the woman had already left. Without paying it any mind, Mu Yun closed the villa's front door, then quickly stored the tables, chairs, and sofa in the living room into the space ring. This cleared out the living room space. Only then did he have them start unloading. The living room, originally over 100 square meters, was instantly filled to the brim with neatly packaged delicious dishes. The waiters doing the carrying looked puzzled when they saw this, completely unable to figure out what this young boss was up to. The total price of these dishes would easily come to well over 100,000, and that was still at cost price. Could this gentleman really finish all this by himself? Rich people really do know how to have fun. But Mu Yun had no intention of explaining it all. President Mu, if there's nothing else, I'll head back first. The next trip will probably be around evening. Preparing the ingredients takes some time. If you need anything, just call me. Go ahead. After seeing off the restaurant staff, Mu Yun waved his hand at the living room, and the delicious food filling the room instantly vanished without a trace. Not long after, several more vans arrived one after another. President Mu, here are 99 dishes, with 18 portions of each. The manager of another large restaurant stood beside Mu Yun and reported respectfully. Move them in. After that, 4 more groups came. Mu Yun followed the same method and stored all this food in his space. In just half a day, he had collected more than 10,000 dishes. If it were just Mu Yun and Kiki, these dishes would be enough for them to eat for 3 years. At this rate, after 3 months Mu Yun would be able to stockpile enough food for the next 900 years. Barely enough, I suppose. Mu Yun curled his lips into a faint smile and nodded in satisfaction. It was now noon, and he happened to be a little hungry. He randomly took out 2 packaged dishes and opened them, 1 squirrel-shaped mandarin fish with pine nuts and 1 boiled sliced pork. Since they had been delivered promptly, they were still steaming hot, at just the right temperature. He picked up a piece of fish with his chopsticks and took a bite. It was fresh, tender, and silky, leaving a fragrant aftertaste in his mouth. Mu Yun immediately nodded in approval. Not bad, not bad. Mu Yun wore a look of satisfaction as he ate with great relish. After finishing the meal, Mu Yun went to the company. There were still a few hours before the next food delivery in the evening, enough time for him to do some other things. He had just sat down in the boss's chair when his sexy little secretary knocked and entered. Chu Antian, with dark circles under her eyes, dropped a pile of reports and documents onto Mu Yun's desk, clearly having stayed up late working overtime last night. President Mu, these are the planning proposals for the new project that need your review, and there are also asset transfer documents that need your signature. Looking at the mountain of documents piled up, Mu Yun felt a headache coming on. Still, he braced himself and began reviewing them. He glanced up at Chu Antian, who was yawning repeatedly, and let out a helpless sigh. Go get some rest. I'll handle these documents. Chu Antian shook her head. It's okay, I'm not sleepy yet. As soon as she said that, she let out another yawn. Mu Yun, go sit on the sofa for a while. I'll call you when I'm done. Chu Antian hesitated for a moment, then nodded in agreement. She had stayed up all night organizing these documents, so she really was a little tired now. As a result, not long after sitting down, she accidentally fell asleep. Seeing Chu Antian sink into deep sleep with a glistening trail of drool at the corner of her mouth, Mu Yun couldn't help but laugh. So he found a blanket in the cabinet and draped it over her. After that, Mu Yun buried himself in those thick stacks of documents again, not finishing until evening. He revised the plan for the new project. First, contact suppliers and stockpile goods in large quantities. The mall and such could wait until 3 months later. However, construction materials like steel bars and cement could be stockpiled first, as these supplies could be used to build his own base city after the apocalypse. He also removed some useless items from the supply list. Things like dolls and toys didn't need to be stockpiled, since they would be of no use. The main thing is to stockpile more food like rice, vegetables, and pork, as well as salt, seasonings, oil, sauce, vinegar, tea. After revising the plan, it was getting late. Mu Yun woke Chu Antian, who was sleeping soundly. President Mu, I'm sorry, I fell asleep. Chu Antian rubbed her eyes, a blush creeping onto her pretty face as she spoke somewhat embarrassedly. It's fine, I've redone the documents. I'll leave the rest to you. No problem, President Mu. Chu Antian took the documents from Mu Yun's hands and began reading them seriously. She clearly had no intention of getting off work. It was obvious she was planning to work overtime again tonight. Mu Yun wasn't going to say things like it could wait until tomorrow, even though there were still 90 days until the apocalypse. And there was plenty of time. No one could guarantee that no accidents would happen. The sooner the supplies were in hand, the more at ease Mu Yun would feel. Since this girl was working so hard, he was naturally happy to let her do so. At worst, he could just give her a long vacation after 3 months. They weren't some heartless company, and employee benefits were definitely top-notch. After leaving the company, Mu Yun returned to the detached villa once again and stored the second batch of delivered prepared dishes into the ring. It was now 6 p.m., and another batch would arrive at 10 p.m. tonight. After having dinner at the villa, Mu Yun made a trip to the suburban logistics warehouse district. Seeing that the workers had already gotten off work, Mu Yun shut off the power for the area and cut power to all the surveillance equipment. After that, he hurried back and forth between several warehouses. All kinds of exquisite sofas, kitchen cabinets, refrigerators, washing machines, and so on were all packed into the space, completely emptying the warehouse space. These things were not very useful in the apocalypse, so Mu Yun placed them all in a corner of the space, where they would probably just gather dust in the future. The warehouse rack factory he had acquired that morning had already delivered their inventory and the newly manufactured shelves, which Mu Yun stored in the ring together. He also neatly stacked the packaged delicacies in the process. Inside the ring, All kinds of dishes were arranged by category on rows of perfectly orderly shelves, and Mu Yun instantly felt much better. Truly, only oneself can understand the joy of someone with OCD. After finishing all this, Mu Yun left in grand style. As for the warehouse electricity, it remained shut off. Emptying 5 large warehouses plus more than a dozen medium and small warehouses in 1 hour would make anyone suspicious. Naturally, the cautious and careful Mu Yun would not make such a mistake. Moreover, the strange actions of Feng Lin Group would soon attract the attention of the authorities. So don't underestimate the oversight strength of the Chinese government. After all, that was a flow of 50 billion in funds, not as simple as 500. Mu Yun was only the group's agent, and these assets all belonged to Kiki. Such a major move would very likely get him invited in for questioning by the authorities. This probably wouldn't be a problem in the near term, but over time, it was hard to say. However, Mu Yun had already made plans. Everything was within the plan. By the time he left the warehouse, it was 8 p.m., with 2 hours still left until 10 p.m. Time could not be wasted. Mu Yun drove to the city's famous red light district. Don't get the wrong idea, Mu Yun wasn't that kind of person. On the brightly lit streets, the bustling crowds had begun their colorful nightlife. Mu Yun parked his red supercar at the entrance of an alley, immediately attracting the attention of the girls by the roadside. The red supercar was exceptionally eye-catching in the neon-lit city, like a firefly in the darkness. Mu Yun ignored the people who came up to flirt with him and instead cast his gaze toward the depths of the alley. Adult, foot massage full service. A night at the hair-washing parlor costs 300. Inside this alley were all kinds of shops, with signboards hanging everywhere, and the neon lights made the alley bright as day. There were quite a few scantily dressed, sexy girls standing by the roadside soliciting customers. Mu Yun walked to the entrance of one of the shops and stopped. "Sir, what kind of service do you need? I have a 100 massage here, a 150 foot massage, a 200 hand job, a 300 full service. Overnight is 500, and if you want something more exciting, it'll cost extra." The one receiving Mu Yun was a relatively young-looking girl, dressed in a JK outfit, with a pure and pretty face and a tall, slender figure. The key point was the stockings, black and white, an absolutely killer combo. Fortunately, Mu Yun was a man who could withstand temptation. A little scene like this couldn't sway him. "I'm here to find someone." "Who are you looking for?" "Zhang Depeo." Hearing the name Zhang Depeo, the girl's expression changed slightly, but she still replied with a smile. "Oh, the boss isn't here." Mu Yun frowned slightly and was about to leave. He had just turned around when he noticed a few thug-looking men nearby slowly approaching him. "Bro, where are you going? I saw your car just now, pretty nice. Mind lending it to us bros for a spin?" The thug in the lead blocked Mu Yun's way. He had a buzz cut, a green dragon tattooed on his belly, a fierce tiger tattooed on his arm, and a black snake tattooed across his chest, and a rat tattooed on his back, making him look extremely fierce. He's almost collected the entire Chinese zodiac. What a badass street tough. "Get lost." Mu Yun's tone was icy, and killing intent flickered in his eyes. The oppressive aura forged in the apocalypse instantly made everyone around feel like they could barely breathe. Intimidated by Mu Yun's presence, the thugs all took a step back, then immediately flew into a rage from embarrassment and glared at Mu Yun viciously. "Damn, how dare you talk to me like that?" Beat the hell out of him. As if trying to save face, the few punks immediately threw punches at Mu Yun. But who was Mu Yun? A ruthless man who had survived 30 years in the apocalypse. He didn't take a few street thugs seriously at all. Smack! Mu Yun backhanded the leader across the face, sending him flying backward into another man. Smack! Another crisp smack rang out, and another man clutched his right cheek as he fell to the ground, howling in pain. It all happened too fast. The brief clash was over in the blink of an eye. Seeing 3 of their underlings get flattened, Tattoo Brother and the remaining 3 stood stunned for a moment before turning and running. Mu Yun immediately chased after them and delivered 3 rapid slaps. The 3 underlings instantly collapsed to the ground, groaning. Tattoo Brother was scared stiff, trembling all over. "Be big, brother. Can you not hit my face?" However, Mu Yun responded with 3 merciless hard slaps. In the next moment, Tattoo Brother's face was swollen like a pig's head, and nosebleed trickled down from the corner of his mouth. Just then, a clear female voice rang out by his ear. "Stop." Mu Yun turned his head and saw a group of burly men slowly walking in from outside the alley, led by a tall and beautiful young married woman. Her features were delicate, her skin fair, and her figure curvy in all the right places. Her whole person exuded a strong, mature, dominant aura. At this moment, She was looking at him with a slight frown, then lowered her gaze to glance at the underlings on the ground. You eat so much every day, and all that meat on your bodies is for nothing. You can't even deal with some brat. The beautiful young married woman gave a light snort and lifted her foot to kick the tattooed man. Get lost, get lost, get lost. Don't fucking embarrass me. Hearing this, the few people lying on the ground pretending to be dead immediately scrambled and crawled behind her. Oh my, this young man is quite handsome, even better looking than those movie stars in the cinema. The young married woman teased in fluent northeastern dialect, while staring at Mu Yun with those charming eyes. Ahem. Mu Yun smiled awkwardly. Auntie, you really know how to joke. Hey, how can you talk like that? The young married woman glared at Mu Yun coquettishly. Don't call me auntie, call me little sis. Mu Yun, At that moment, the greeter from the earlier black and white duo walked over and whispered a couple of words into the young married woman's ear. I heard you're here to see me, little bro. The young married woman raised her pretty willow leaf brows and looked him over with a somewhat playful gaze. HM. Mu Yun thought he had misheard. Although the person before him was a bit, bold and uninhibited, there was no way he could associate this still charming young married woman with Zhang Depeo. You're Zhang Depeo? Mu Yun asked tentatively. To his surprise, the young married woman burst out laughing and heartily patted Mu Yun on the shoulder. Zhang Depeo was the name of my damned husband. He was executed by firing squad last year. I told him long ago not to go down the crooked path, but now look. He left me this mess to take over. But now I've already led the brothers back to the straight and narrow, running some legitimate massage parlors to make a living. Mu Yun's face was full of speechless lines. They did look quite legitimate. But after getting the answer, Mu Yun felt a little disappointed. This used to be the territory of Dongxing, the largest gang in Jiangzhou, and he had been thinking of using this channel to get some special weapons, but it had actually already been wiped out. In that case, sorry to disturb you. With that, Mu Yun prepared to leave and think of another way. Unexpectedly, just as he turned around, the young married woman grabbed his arm. Wait. Mu Yun turned back in confusion. Is there anything else? For the famous President Mu to come visit Big Sis here. Leaving without even having a cup of tea would make it seem as though Big Sis was a poor host. The young married woman blinked, a meaningful smile playing at the corners of her mouth. Oh, you know me? Mu Yun raised his brows in surprise. I don't know you, but I recognize the license plate. The young married woman pointed at the red supercar outside the alley and covered her mouth with a coy laugh. Hearing that, Mu Yun suddenly understood. Inside an antique-style room, Zhang Depeo's memorial portrait hung on the wall, and beside it was a small statue of Guangong. The young married woman lit 3 sticks of incense for each of them before sitting down in front of Mu Yun. President Mu, please have some tea. The young married woman picked up the purple clay teapot on the table and poured a cup of premium Biluakun into the teacup in front of Mu Yun. Little sis? Ha. I was just joking with President Mu earlier. My real name is Nyotsue Lan. President Mu can just call me Sister Lan. Originally, Mu Yun didn't pay much attention, but when he heard her name, he suddenly thought of a force from after the apocalypse. Yunlan Tianshang, a force specializing in erotic transactions. However, this force was both a paradise for men and a safe house for women. In the apocalypse, human life was worth less than grass. Trading a bottle of water for a woman to pleasure you was far too normal. Even freeloaders were not uncommon. Worse still, some would kill the woman after using her to silence her forever, worse than beasts. Yunlan Tianshang was single-handedly founded by a strong woman named Sister Lan. Here, everything was done through civilized transactions, food first, then service, all by mutual consent. Anyone who tried to use force or cause trouble was killed by the base guards, ensuring that as long as the women were willing to work, they would not starve to death. Thus, women driven to the brink by hunger flocked to join, eventually turning it into a den of beauty and lavish spending in the early days of the apocalypse. As long as you have enough food, here, you can enjoy treatment fit for an emperor. 1v100 is nothing. Some powerful ability users have incredibly terrifying physical strength, and spending one night vs 1000 is no problem at all. Unfortunately, this force did not withstand the Red Tide's assault, causing a great number of women after the apocalypse to vanish along with it. What a pity, such a pity. The woman before him is also called Sister Lan, and with the storefronts in the alley and those underlings. Presumably that paradise-like force was built by the very woman in front of him. For a moment, Mu Yun was filled with solemn respect, and his gaze towards Sister Lan was full of admiration. This woman truly is a blessing for the vast number of male compatriots. So, Boss Mu, what brings you to my deadbeat husband? If I can help you, I definitely will. When you're out and about, having one more friend means having one more path. Our Dongxing's principle is loyalty, so Boss Mu might as well speak frankly. Looking at such a bold and uninhibited woman, Mu Yun got straight to the point. I want the channel you used before to get goods. As soon as Mu Yun finished speaking, the surroundings instantly fell silent. Those underlings all turned grim-faced, staring hostilely at the handsome young man before them. Boss Mu, you're not joking with me, are you? Do you think that's necessary? An hour later, Mu Yun left this colorful red light district. Dongxing, who had long since washed their hands of the business, was not living well. The main reason was that after going straight, they had lost their source of income and still needed to support a whole group of brothers. When Mu Yun took out a bank card with 5 million on it, Dongxing was completely won over by Mu Yun. Besides obtaining that special channel, Mu Yun also became Dongxing's behind-the-scenes boss. Some shady matters and trivial affairs needed these people to handle. No matter how capable Mu Yun was, he still couldn't take care of everything himself, mainly because he had too much money to spend on his own. However, Sister Lan would not do certain utterly immoral dealings. She did not want to follow the same old path as her deadbeat husband. Mu Yun didn't mind this, because he didn't need these people to kill or commit arson. He only needed them to help him spend money and purchase supplies. After leaving his phone number, Mu Yun returned to the villa. It happened to be 10 o'clock at night. After putting the dishes delivered from the restaurant into the spatial ring, Mu Yun ended his busy day. By the time he returned to the manor, Kiki had already fallen asleep in Mu Yun's room. After taking a comfortable shower, and then afraid of waking Kiki, Mu Yun quietly and carefully slipped under the covers. After lying down, Mu Yun looked at the soundly sleeping Kiki beside him, and couldn't help lowering his head to kiss her on the forehead. In her sleep, Kiki seemed to be dreaming of some delicious delicacy and let out a satisfied soft moan. After tucking the blanket around her, Mu Yun fell fast asleep as well. At this time, there were 89 days left until the apocalypse. The next morning, as usual, Mu Yun went to the company to handle matters related to procuring supplies. With 2 dark circles under her eyes, Chu Antian delivered the proposal she had stayed up all night organizing to the heads of each department. The massive commercial machine that was Fenglin Group began to roar into action. Manufacturers of all kinds of supplies Mu Yun needed successively reached contracts with the group. After the deposits were paid, large quantities of supplies from all over the country began gathering at the suburban warehouse. Besides that, those previously transferred industries were also acquired by various major enterprises. Among them, the Wu Group acquired 60% of the industries. In order to raise funds, Wu Changshan even borrowed several billion from the bank, betting his entire fortune and life on acquiring these industries. This instantly increased Mu Yun's liquid funds by more than 6 billion. And together with the funds gathered from the other industries, Mu Yun now had 10 billion more on hand. There were still some real estate and financial businesses that couldn't be sold off that quickly. It will still take some time, but Mu Yun estimates he can also raise about 10 billion in funds. After a busy week, everything had gotten on track. The empty warehouse was being filled up by truckloads of supplies, and every night Mu Yun would cut the power and clear out the warehouse. To avoid attracting attention, those thugs from Dongxing came in handy, driving more than a dozen empty trucks around the warehouse twice every day. Although they had no idea what it was for, since it was an order from their new boss, they just did as told anyway, and got paid for it. After this week, Mu Yun's spatial ring had gained 1,000 tons of rice, 600 tons of vegetables, 500 tons of pork, 300 tons of eggs, and 300 tons of fish, as well as fruit, beverages, seafood, and other miscellaneous foods. There was also no shortage of seasonings and the like. The most crucial was salt. If the human body lacks salt for a long time, it becomes weak. Losing strength would be fatal in the apocalypse, but Mu Yun had naturally thought of that. And inside the space, bag after bag of fine white salt was neatly placed on the shelves. There were at least over 100 tons, enough to feed tens of thousands of people for years. Besides that, some daily necessities were not overlooked either. Toiletries, household goods, cooking utensils, bedding, and so on. Especially BYT, which was precious material in the apocalypse. After the apocalypse, baby-making incidents would be frequent, and no one wanted to catch some disease, right? He had to stockpile more. There were also cigarettes and alcohol, the seasoning of the apocalypse, so he had to hoard some. The categories of goods Mu Yun stockpiled were based on supermarket standards, basically covering every aspect of daily life. Aside from these, Mu Yun also found a rare metals and minerals company and bought a large amount of precious metals and minerals that would be impossible to find in the apocalypse. these things would be of great use. The above were just the basics. With his newly acquired liquid funds, Mu Yun began purchasing large amounts of alcohol, gauze, iodine, antibiotics, anti-inflammatory medicine, as well as commonly used drugs from pharmacies. There were also tents, compasses, nylon ropes, binoculars, flashlights, batteries, lighters, hiking backpacks, outdoor jackets, combat uniforms, sleeping bags, walkie-talkies, goggles, protective suits, gas masks. There were still many supplies Mu Yun wanted to stockpile, but there were no suitable channels. For supplies under strict control, such as gasoline and gas, no matter how much money Mu Yun had, the government would not let you purchase them without limit. So he turned his attention to electricity. He found several generator factories and custom-ordered tens of thousands of hand-powered generators, several hundred diesel generators, and a large number of storage batteries. After doing all this, Mu Yun had added everything he could currently think of and obtain to the procurement list. As for things like grain seeds, they were useless. After the apocalypse, the harsh environment simply wouldn't allow crops to be grown, even indoors. Now, the acquisition of supplies had gotten on track, and Mu Yun had also gotten in touch with a foreign arms dealer. It was time to set his sights on weapons. Although in the early stages of the apocalypse one could awaken as an esper through the green tide, early-stage espers were still inferior to an ordinary strong man. What use was a fireball only a little bigger than a lighter flame? A water ball was at least somewhat useful, since it could quench thirst. 1,000 espers still wouldn't be as lethal as a Vulcan Barrett. Mu Yun informed the restaurants to put the cooked dishes in the freezer first and deliver the meals in 2 days. Then that night he gave the warehouse, which was about to be filled to capacity, a thorough clearing out, and afterward instructed the old butler at the manor to take good care of Kiki. After doing all this, Mu Yun took Sister Lan and 3 burly men onto a plane bound for the free and beautiful tip. The company's affairs were temporarily handed over to Chu Antian. If there were problems she couldn't handle, they would use video calls. On the plane, President Mu, we agreed, okay? I'm just accompanying you on this trip. I won't do anything illegal. Sister Lan frowned slightly, a hint of worry on her face. I'm so rich, why would I risk getting executed doing this kind of business? Don't you think so? Mu Yun gave her a reassuring look and comforted her. Sister Lan nodded at his words. True enough. But deep down, she still felt faintly uneasy. She didn't know why Mu Yun insisted on finding an arms dealer, and he wouldn't tell them what exactly it was for. Hopefully everything would go smoothly. The plane landed at the airport. There are so many foreigners here. The tattooed man had come along to beautiful tip this time as well, and as soon as he got off the plane, he let out this sigh. The whole group stared at him like he was an idiot, making him feel uneasy. Fortunately, the people around them couldn't understand Chinese, or it would have been too embarrassing. Damn, you can actually say something like that? You idiot. If I'd known, I wouldn't have brought you out. Sister Lan walked up and slapped him hard, then glared at him fiercely. The tattooed man shrank his neck and quickly lowered his head without saying a word. Actually, he was just expressing a simple feeling. He hadn't done anything bad. Mu Yun was pressed for time. Just taking the flight had already cost nearly a day. The warehouse would be full in 4 days, and he had to get back before it overflowed. The group of 5 called 2 cars and went straight to their destination. Maryland, a state that loves peace. Mu Yun arrived at a huge European-style manor on the outskirts of the capital. This manor was built at the foot of a mountain, far from the bustling city, with beautiful scenery and a pleasant environment. A group of people in sharp suits had long been waiting at the door to receive him, and the leader, a sunglassed man with slicked-back hair, wore a smile on his face. Upon seeing Mu Yun, he quickly walked over and shook his hand. Mr. Mu, you finally arrived. Mu Yun nodded and said in fluent English, we were delayed a bit on the way. Sorry to have kept you waiting. No problem, please come with me. The slick-haired man led him toward the interior of the manor. Mu Yun and his group followed him inside. Along the way, there were guards on patrol carrying live firearms, making it obvious at a glance just how peaceful this place was. After passing through a long corridor, they were finally brought to a spacious and luxurious villa. This villa occupied half the manor, and the interior was extravagantly luxurious. The man led Mu Yun and Sister Lan to the sofa, then instructed the servants to bring tea and coffee. And after chatting with Mu Yun for a few more words, he left. Mu Yun narrowed his eyes slightly as he took in everything before him, when a deep, magnetic voice came from behind him. Mr. Mu, welcome. Mu Yun turned around and saw an elderly man with a slender figure sitting in a wheelchair. He was dressed in a black suit, with blonde hair and blue eyes, and deeply defined handsome features. At that moment, He was looking at Mu Yun with a smile, as if the voice just now had come from those thin lips. "Hello, Mr. Fels." Mu Yun stood up and politely greeted Fels. Fels waved a hand at him, signaling for him to sit. After Mu Yun sat down again, Fels looked at Sister Lan beside him and asked in fluent Chinese, "This is Mrs. Niu, Mr. Zhang's wife, isn't it? I haven't seen Mr. Zhang for almost a year. I wonder how Mr. Zhang has been recently? Thank you for your concern, Mr. Fels. My husband was executed a year ago." This. Fels looked somewhat embarrassed. He gave a light cough. "I'm sorry, Mrs. Niu. I wasn't aware of it and meant no offense." Sister Lan lowered her eyes and replied blandly, "It's all right. In that case, this Mr. Mu is your new husband, then? Quite a handsome and impressive man indeed." Fels changed the subject. Sister Lan's pretty face flushed red. Although she was already nearly 30, she still retained her charm. She shot Fels an annoyed glare. "Mr. Fels, if you don't know how to chat, don't force it. Listening to you makes my head hurt." Sister Lan said in a slightly teasing tone. "Ahem, back to the point." Fels coughed twice to cover his embarrassment. "May I ask what Mr. Mu needs from me this time?" Mu Yun curled his lips into a faint smile and slowly explained, "Mr. Fels, you're a smart man. I'm here for nothing other than discussing an arms deal. To avoid trouble." Mu Yun began speaking with Fels in English, lest Sister Lan and the others hear it and get scared shitless. "Oh, I wonder what kind of arms Mr. Mu is looking for?" Fels asked with great interest. "Weapons and equipment, tanks, planes, missiles. If you have nukes, I can take some of those too." Fels nodded slightly. "Mr. Mu, you really are asking for the moon. I wonder how big Mr. Mu's appetite is." "Not bad." Mu Yun admitted without the slightest hesitation, "About 10 billion or so. US dollars? RMB. Fels was actually quite advanced in years and had been planning to clear out all his inventory and then retire for good. When he heard the figure Mu Yun proposed, he couldn't help but feel overjoyed. "Ha ha ha. It seems Mr. Mu is preparing to do something big." Fels laughed. "I just don't know whether Mr. Fels has the goods I want here," Mu Yun said casually. Hearing this, Fels immediately restrained his smile and looked at Mu Yun seriously. "To be honest, I do still have some stock on hand. Mr. Mu may as well take a look." Soon, one of his subordinates handed over a list. Mu Yun took it and began reading it carefully. M4A1 carbine, quantity 10,000. 5.56 by 45 mm caliber. Compatible with Stanag magazines, 20, 30, 35 rounds. Effective range 400-600 m, muzzle velocity 884 meters per second. Price 1,000 US dollars, approximately 6,000 renminbi. Colt M2000 pistol, quantity 1,000. 9 mm caliber, effective range 50 m, 15 round magazine. Price 300 US dollars, approximately 1,800 renminbi. MQ 9B maritime patrol drone, quantity 3. Length 11.7 meters, wingspan 24 meters, maximum flight speed about 460 kilometers per hour, maximum endurance up to 35 hours. Theoretically, it could even circle around Japan twice. It has a ventral pod and can be equipped with search radar or with auxiliary fuel tanks to increase endurance. It has 4 underwing hardpoints and can carry up to 8 Hellfire anti-tank missiles, or 4 Hellfires and 2 GBU, 12 laser-guided bombs, giving it strong ground and sea attack capabilities. Total price for the 3 aircraft, 600 million renminbi. F-35 fighter jets, quantity 3, total price 1.4 billion renminbi. Intercontinental ballistic missiles *10, total price 50 million renminbi. M777 howitzers *100, total price 600 million renminbi. AH-64 Apache attack helicopters *5, total price 750 million renminbi. 400 million bullets of various calibers, total price 2 billion renminbi. 30,000 howitzer shells, total price 1.5 billion renminbi. Rocket launchers, grenades, explosives. After reading the list, the corners of Mu Yun's mouth began to rise wildly. They were all good stuff. "Mr. Fels, I'll take it all, but I have one condition. Please go ahead, Mr. Mu. I need a large amount of gasoline and diesel. Does Mr. Fels have channels for that?" "Ha ha ha. Mr. Mu is worried about not having enough fuel to power these weapons, right? No need to worry. I just so happen to have some left on hand, so I'll throw it in for Mr. Mu as part of the clearance sale." "In that case, thank you, Mr. Fels. Happy cooperation." The two sides shook hands and reached an agreement. After that, the two discussed matters for quite a while longer, until night fell. Fels very courteously treated the group to a lavish meal, then arranged for someone to take them to a 5-star hotel to rest. As long as tomorrow's payment is transferred into Fels's account, the entire arms warehouse will belong to Mu Yun. There are also some worthless little trinkets in the warehouse, mostly cold weapons like machetes, as well as a few exquisitely crafted tang sabers. All sorts of miscellaneous odds and ends were thrown in and given to Mu Yun together, making things easier for Fels and easier for Mu Yun as well. The next day, Mu Yun had Chu Antian transfer the funds from the sale of the real estate and financial businesses into an account at a Swedish bank, exactly 10 billion. Afterward, led by Fels, Mu Yun came alone to a huge warehouse in the outskirts. Looking at the large stockpile of weapons parked inside, Mu Yun smiled in satisfaction. Especially those 10 intercontinental missiles and 3 fighter jets. This round was a sure win. Mr. Fels truly was an honest businessman.